The words shocked everyone in the lavish marble hall of Senor Alberto's mansion. The chandelier glittered above them like 1,000 diamonds frozen in midair. The scent of imported lilies filled the atmosphere, and the 5 rich, elegant women seated before the boy carried themselves with the poise of queens. They were adorned in silks and jewels, their smiles carefully polished like fine glass. Each of them had been chosen by Alberto, a widower with immeasurable fortune, to potentially become the stepmother of his only heir, Raphael. Raphael, however, was no ordinary boy. Though only 12, he had the sharp gaze of someone who understood far more than adults gave him credit for. He had lived through the death of his mother, he had seen the hollow shallowness of the rich women his father often entertained, and he had felt the loneliness of being raised more by nannies than by love. When his father, in a moment of both desperation and pride, announced, "Son, you will choose who shall be your new mother," the world of opulence seemed to collapse under the weight of such an unusual demand. The boy did not look at the women before him. He did not study their diamond necklaces, their designer gowns, or their smiles that failed to reach their eyes. Instead, he turned his gaze to the back of the hall, where Maria, the humble cleaner, was quietly dusting the corner. Her clothes were simple, her shoes worn, and her hands bore the roughness of endless labor. She had never once spoken to Raphael in pretension, only with warmth. She had tied his shoelaces once when no one noticed. She had comforted him when he cried alone in the garden, and she had whispered prayers over him when she thought he was asleep. "Father," Raphael's voice rang out clear and unwavering, "I choose her." The entire room fell into stunned silence. The 5 rich women gasped, their painted lips parting in disbelief. Alberto himself froze, his glass of wine trembling in his hand. Who do you mean?" he demanded, though deep inside he already knew. Raphael walked past the row of elegant women, each of them staring at him with contempt, and pointed at Maria. "I choose her. Maria, the one who cleans our floors but never makes me feel small. She is kind. She is the mother I need." Maria nearly dropped the feather duster in her hand. Her eyes widened, her lips trembled, and she shook her head fiercely. "No, Señorito Raphael, don't speak such things. I am only a worker here. I have nothing, I am nothing." "You are not nothing," Raphael interrupted softly, his young voice carrying a weight that silenced even the cynical laughter of the rich women. "You are everything I wish a mother could be." The hall erupted into chaos. One of the wealthy ladies, adorned in a gown shimmering like liquid silver, stood up indignantly. "This is absurd. Alberto, are you truly going to allow your son to disgrace your family by choosing a maid over women of our stature?" Another chimed in, her jewels jingling with her sharp movements. "This is not just scandalous, it is humiliating. For you, for your fortune, for your legacy. Think of what society will say. A millionaire's wife, a cleaner." But Raphael stood his ground, his small fists clenched, his chin lifted proudly. "I don't care what society says. I care about love. My mother loved me. Maria loves me. None of you even looked at me as more than a gateway to my father's fortune." Alberto, silent until now, placed his glass down with a trembling hand. His heart was torn in 2 directions, between pride and the echo of his late wife's words. She had once whispered to him on her deathbed, "Promise me, Alberto, don't let money choose for Raphael what only love can give." At the time, he had dismissed it, blinded by grief and the pressures of wealth. But now, staring at his son, who bore the same fierce eyes as his late wife, he felt those words clawing back at his conscience. Maria fell to her knees, tears spilling down her face. "Please, senor, don't punish the boy for speaking with innocence. I have no right, no place in this house beyond cleaning it. I could never be." "Stop." Alberto's voice was deep, commanding, silencing the entire hall. He looked at his son, then at Maria, then at the women who sat in shocked outrage. Perhaps my son sees something we have all forgotten, that a home is not built on gold or marble, but on kindness." The women scoffed, muttering among themselves, but Alberto's gaze was heavy with a decision that would soon shake everything they knew. He rose from his chair, the light of the chandelier catching the gray in his hair, and walked slowly toward Maria. The cleaner lowered her head, trembling, unable to meet his eyes. "Maria," he said quietly, almost in disbelief at his own words, "do you understand what my son has asked? He does not want a woman of wealth or society. He wants you. And I cannot ignore his voice, not when it echoes so deeply with truth." The women gasped again, louder this time, demanding, protesting, warning of scandal and ruin. But Raphael rushed forward, clutching Maria's hand, looking up at his father with unshakable certainty. She is the one. If you love me, father, if you loved mother, you'll see it too. Maria sobbed harder, torn between fear and an emotion she dared not name. She had never dreamt of such a life, never even dared to imagine being more than the invisible hands that kept the mansion polished. Yet here was the heir of the house, choosing her over the world. The hall trembled with tension. Alberto stood frozen between society's expectations and his son's plea, his mind unraveling with memories, love, and pride. The chandelier glittered above them. The 5 women seethed with fury, and Maria's tears fell like rain on marble. And in that single moment, the air of the mansion shifted forever. The silence in the grand hall felt like eternity, though only seconds passed. The 5 women still sat in disbelief, their faces stiff with offended pride. Raphael's small hand clutched Maria's trembling fingers as though he feared she might be pulled away. Maria, with her eyes red and swollen, could barely breathe, afraid that the next words from Signor Alberto would shatter the fragile hope blooming in Raphael's heart. Alberto's chest rose and fell heavily. He turned to the women who represented everything his world had taught him to value: status, elegance, and social standing. They were the picture of wealth, but their cold glares and contempt revealed what Raphael already knew. Not one of them had love to offer. He then turned back to Maria, whose worn hands spoke of hardship, whose eyes carried humility, and whose every action toward his son had been marked by sincerity. "You," Alberto said slowly, his voice deep, measured, and heavy with unspoken conflict, "have shown more humanity in silence than many have shown in all their words." He glanced at Raphael. "My son has spoken with the clarity of truth. And truth is not always what we want to hear, but it is what we must honor." One of the women rose abruptly, her silk dress sweeping across the floor like a wave of disapproval. "Alberto, this is madness. Do you not see what this will do to your reputation? Your name will be dragged into ridicule. You will be scorned in every circle. A millionaire marrying a maid? Think of the empire you have built." Alberto turned to her, his eyes sharp, and for the first time in years, he felt the hollowness of those words. "What is an empire, if within its walls my own son cannot find love?" The woman faltered, sitting down with a huff, her jewels clinking angrily. Maria, however, shook her head violently, pulling her hand gently from Raphael's. "No, senor, no, you cannot. I cannot. I clean your floors, I scrub your walls. People will laugh at you. They will say your family is ruined. I am not worthy. I am nothing but a poor woman trying to survive." Raphael stepped in front of her, his small body shielding her from the weight of the moment. His eyes, filled with both innocence and wisdom, locked on his father's. "Father, didn't mother teach us that love doesn't look at worth? She always said, the richest hearts are found in the poorest places." Alberto's throat tightened. He remembered that night, long ago, when his wife whispered those very words as they strolled in their garden. She had believed in kindness, in the power of sincerity over appearances. And Alberto, once upon a time, had believed it too, before business hardened him, before society's eyes weighed heavier than his own heart. The chandelier above sparkled, as though reminding him of promises unkept. He finally exhaled, his decision written in the resolute firmness of his jaw. "If my son chooses Maria," Alberto declared, his voice steady now, echoing across the marble hall, "then Maria it shall be. Wealth can buy the world, but it cannot buy the soul of a child who knows what love feels like. And I will not be the man who denies his son the truth he sees so clearly." Gasps erupted. The women's outrage filled the room. Some muttered that he had lost his mind, others whispered of disgrace. But their voices were like shallow echoes against the deeper tide that had already turned. Maria collapsed to her knees, weeping. "No, senor, don't do this for pity. Don't ruin your life for me. I cannot bear such a burden. I am not enough." Alberto knelt down before her, his expensive suit touching the polished floor, something unimaginable for a man of his pride. He gently took her hand, roughened by years of work, and spoke softly. "Maria, you have already given my son more than all of this wealth has ever given him, time, warmth, and care. If that is not enough to make you worthy, then nothing in this world is." The words struck Maria like lightning. Her sobs grew heavier, and Raphael threw his arms around her, whispering into her ear, "See? I told you, Maria. You're the one." In that moment, the world outside the mansion seemed irrelevant. The whispers of society, the rules of class, the judgment of the powerful. All of it shrank before the raw, undeniable bond between a boy and the woman who loved him with no condition. Alberto stood, his hand still holding Maria's, as though lifting her from the shadows she had always lived in. His voice rang out, final and commanding, silencing every protest. This house will not be ruled by appearances. It will be ruled by love. Those who cannot accept that truth may leave. And just like that, the 5 wealthy women, their faces dark with insult, gathered their gowns and stormed out, their heels clicking furiously against the marble. Their departure echoed like the fall of a dynasty. The hall grew quiet again, but it was no longer the silence of tension. It was the silence of a storm that had passed. Raphael hugged Maria tightly, refusing to let go, as though afraid she might still be taken from him. Maria's tears streamed freely, but behind them, a new light began to shine, a light she had never dared to imagine. Alberto looked at them both, and for the first time since his wife's passing, a genuine smile broke across his face. It was a smile not born of deals or wealth, but of something richer. He felt his late wife's presence in that hall, as though she too was smiling, whispering, "You finally remembered." Servants, who had been frozen in disbelief, slowly began to smile as well, their loyalty shifting not only to their employer, but to the new hope blossoming within the mansion's walls. For they had seen, day after day, how Maria treated the boy with tenderness unseen in anyone else. Now she was no longer invisible. Raphael looked up at his father, his voice filled with a mixture of triumph and vulnerability. "Father, are you truly happy with my choice?" Alberto knelt down to his son's level, placing both hands on his shoulders. "My son, happiness has eluded me for years, but today, because of your courage, I feel it again. If this is your choice, then it is mine too." Maria sobbed quietly, covering her face, overwhelmed by the surreal turn of fate. Alberto gently lifted her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Maria, this is no charity, no pity. This is a decision of honor, of respect, and perhaps of something more that we will learn together." And though Maria still trembled, Raphael's arms around her gave her the strength to finally whisper, "If this is truly what you both want, then I will give all of myself to protect and love this family." The mansion, once a cold palace of marble and silence, now seemed alive with a warmth that jewels and riches had never brought. It was as though the walls themselves breathed differently, carrying the weight of a new beginning. And from that day forward, the echoes of laughter and sincerity began to seep through its corridors, changing not only the fate of a boy and a cleaner, but the destiny of a man who had rediscovered the forgotten treasure of love. The days that followed in the mansion were unlike any the world had ever imagined. Whispers spread through the city like wildfire. The newspapers wrote of scandal, the wealthy scoffed in disbelief, and society declared it the greatest folly of the century, that a man of Senor Alberto's power and fortune would dare to honor the word of his son and embrace a cleaner as family. Yet behind those iron gates and marble walls, the truth was very different. Raphael no longer wandered the halls in silence. His laughter echoed like sunlight spilling into the darkest corners. Maria, though still trembling under the weight of her new place in their lives, began to shine in ways no diamond could. She remained humble, still rising early to sweep floors and polish the wood, until Alberto gently told her, "You are no longer a servant in this house. You are its heart." Even then, she would smile shyly and reply, "A heart beats best when it serves." And with that, her presence transformed the mansion from a monument of wealth into a home. The world outside sneered, but the servants inside, who had long watched Maria's kindness, stood taller, proud that one of their own had been recognized. For the first time, they felt seen. Alberto himself noticed things he had once overlooked. The small moments of care, the power of gentleness, the way Raphael's eyes glowed when Maria tucked him in at night. He began to wonder if all his millions had blinded him to the very essence of life, that love was the only currency that never lost its value. Yet not all was easy. Invitations to elite gatherings stopped arriving. Former allies distanced themselves. Rivals whispered that Alberto had gone mad, that his empire would crumble. But when they looked for weakness in him, they found none. For though he had once built his life on the approval of others, he now walked with the certainty of a man who had rediscovered his soul. With every rumor, with every insult, his resolve grew stronger. Maria herself struggled, caught between gratitude and fear. She would sit by her small window at night, staring at the stars, whispering prayers that she would not fail the boy who had chosen her. More than once, she told Alberto, "You can still change your mind. You can still choose someone worthy of you." And each time, he answered with a calm strength. Maria, worth is not measured by gold. Worth is measured by love. And you are rich beyond measure. Raphael thrived. For the first time since his mother's passing, he did not feel alone. Maria taught him small lessons that no tutor ever had. The joy of planting seeds and watching them grow, the beauty of speaking kindly even to those who could not repay it, the strength found in humility. The boy who once carried grief now carried hope, and with every smile, Alberto felt his late wife's spirit alive in the woman his son had chosen. The defining moment came one evening, months later, when the family was invited, unexpectedly, to a gala hosted by the very elites who had once abandoned them. Many thought Alberto would not attend, ashamed of the whispers. But he arrived, with Maria at his side and Raphael holding her hand. Gasps filled the hall as they entered. All eyes turned toward the woman who once scrubbed floors, now walking with the heir and the master of the house. Some laughed, some sneered, some whispered cruel things behind jeweled hands. And then, Alberto raised his glass. His voice carried across the hall with the authority of a man who had nothing left to prove. "You see Maria as a cleaner," he said. "I see her as the one who cleaned the dust from my soul. You see her as poor. I see her as rich in everything that matters, faith, kindness, and love. You measure wealth by jewels. My son measures wealth by the way someone holds his heart. Which of you is richer?" The hall grew silent. No one dared to answer. For though many still disapproved, they could not deny the conviction in his words. And Maria, who stood trembling with tears in her eyes, realized then that she was no longer invisible. She was not chosen by accident or by pity. She was chosen because love, pure and unshakable, had placed her there. From that night forward, everything changed. The scandal turned into legend. People who had mocked began to whisper in awe. Those who had sneered began to question their own values. And though society never fully accepted her, they could not deny that Maria had done what no wealth, no power, no status ever could. She had given back to a broken family its soul. Years passed, and the story only grew. Raphael became a young man shaped not by arrogance, but by humility. He carried within him the lessons of both his late mother and the woman who raised him with quiet strength. Alberto, older now, often looked at his son with pride and whispered, "You saved me the day you chose her." And Maria, though she never wore crowns or diamonds, carried in her eyes the crown of love, the one treasure that can never be bought. And so, what began as a scandal, as whispers of ruin, became a testament that echoed far beyond marble halls and crystal chandeliers. It reminded the world that the truest riches are found not in bank accounts or estates, but in the simple, unshakable power of love. For the boy who chose a cleaner over queens taught everyone a lesson that time itself would not forget. Greatness is not in what you possess, but in whom you choose to honor with your heart. And that more than fortune, more than empire, more than all the jewels of the world, is what makes a family truly magnificent. And though the world may never fully understand, within the walls of that mansion lived a truth so profound it outshone every diamond chandelier. That a boy's innocence, a father's courage, and a humble woman's love had rewritten destiny. Their story was not one of wealth, it was one of faith. Not one of scandal, but of redemption. And it lived on, not in newspapers or gossip, but in the laughter of a boy who had once been lonely and was now surrounded by love. A love that defied logic, broke barriers, and proved that even in a world obsessed with power, the pure choice of a child could shake the earth and light the heavens. And so, in the end, Maria, the poor cleaner, became not just Raphael's mother, not just Alberto's partner, but the soul of a story that the world would tell for generations. A story of how love, against all odds, chose her, and in choosing her, saved them all.